Richard, Inman and Paul Thorpe, please join me. Come on. So, as I said, we bring our main guests on in a minute, but one of the themes of tonight's discussion is strengthening the United Kingdom, making it a more functioning, better country for everybody. Really, that's what we want. And we know it's none of those things at the moment, really. So Richard and Paul here have been very good at developing something called the Pledge. I don't know if you know about the Pledge. I think it's on your seats. But I wanted Richard just to kick off with, tell us what the Pledge is.
Well, the Pledge is a really, really good furniture polish. You can get it in most discount stores.
There you go. So
we can all go home.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Paul?
The Pledge is an initiative that we worked on for quite a few years, to be brutally honest with you. And it came to fruition, where are we now? Is it 2023 or 2024? I can't remember. But anyway, we launched it properly last November. Ben was here at the launch of it. It was an absolutely fantastic launch. It's an ideology for the movement. Because what our movement is needing, and always has needed, is an overarching ideology that pretty much anybody with common sense can sign up to. And we've now got that, and we've now got thousands, tens of thousands of people signing up to it. At the minute, we're up to about 70,000 people signed up to the Pledge. We want to get to 100,000 before the end of the weekend. We want to get 100,000 in short order, but it is to give people something to believe in and something to unite around, because what the Pledge does, it cuts off the far right. So if you're a racist, you're an anti-Semite, you can't sign the Pledge because it's very, very specific about that. Mm-hmm. It does away with all the woke nonsense, all the stuff that's really, really dragging our country down. It cuts off the globalists, it cuts off the Islamists and the communists, and it unites around good old-fashioned British values, Christian values, conservative values. And by the way, you don't need to be religious or a Christian to sign the Pledge, but they're the values that are embedded in it. I don't know if you can get this on the camera. I'm going to have to maybe move a little bit, but that's the QR code. So please scan that QR code and share it with at least 10 of your friends, because that's how we grow these things. But the thinking behind it is, once we got to about 1 million people on the Pledge, then what we can do, we can use it as a lobbying mechanism for politicians. So we can go to politicians and say, what do you think of the Pledge? Do you sign up to its principles? And then we will let all the members know that those politicians have either signed it or refused to sign it.
Okay. And Paul, I mean, how do you see the Pledge working out over the next couple of years?
Well, hopefully it's going to unite people. That's the main, for me, that's the main reason. Can I just say, a period on stage was a complete surprise. I would have put something kind of a little bit more formal, but so it's about uniting people for me. And I think that's the trouble we've got at the moment, is getting people together.
Division, yeah. Division. It is, and you know, when Ben comes on shortly, he's going to talk about, if you're familiar with his Great British Pack, and he's going to explain that as well. But I think, you know, there's enough space out there for different people to find ways to bring us all together. You know, so if you haven't signed the Pledge, I would urge you to have a read of it, and if you can, do that. Support Richard, support Paul, support plans to try and, as you say, bring together people that are currently split apart, and that's not good. So, look, Richard and Paul, thank you both very much for being on the stage with me. Have a good. Now, again, events like this don't happen just like so, and one of the things that events like this needs is a sponsor. And I'm very pleased, these are our sponsors here, our friends at Gold Bullion Partners, and I'd like to invite Nick to come up just for a second. So welcome, please, Nick from Gold Bullion Partners. We should really have Spandau Ballet's Gold playing when you're coming up, you know, to give it a bit of musical medley. But yeah, just very quickly, and so that you understand what Nick's doing. Nick, the absolute state of the UK economy. We've got Labour in power, we've got all kinds of issues and problems. Tell us how you can help people in particular regard with protecting their wealth, and how do you see stuff working out?
I mean, I don't think it matters who's in power at the moment either, guys. We're Labour, Conservative, it's all one and the same thing. We're in a debt bubble, so currently the government will tell you our debt is about 2 trillion, and it's actually not that at all. It's about 12 trillion if you want to look at all our unfunded liabilities and everything else. So just to put that into perspective, that's about 180,000 for every member of the audience. So we're now spending more money on servicing our debt than we are on any other key kind of need, really. NHS, education, everything. So ultimately there's no way that we can really get out of that. They can either inflate it away, or they can tax us even more than they already are, as if that's even possible. So where can you put your money? Where can you protect it? What is tax-free and what's private now? And one of the only solutions left that you've got is gold. It enables you to take back control of your own money. It gives you autonomy, privacy. It enables you to just keep it away from the government, ultimately. Whether you take delivery of it or you store it in a vault in Switzerland or in London.
And tell us, if people want to find out more, how do they do that?
Yeah, just give me a call. I mean, you can meet me at the end of this if you want, or my partner Dan over there in the corner. We'll just go onto our website, or alternatively you can just download our guide there on one of the banners, and you can get all the information you need there as well.
I think one of the things that probably everybody in this room believes in is freedom, and having freedom. And if you don't have financial freedom, you don't have freedom. And that's, I think everyone will probably accept that. So I think through history shows gold has always been an important asset, and I think everyone should consider that. So Nick, Gold Bullion Partners, and a big round of applause for our sponsors. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, okay. So without further ado, as I shuffle along here, effortlessly from one seat to the other, we're going to bring on our panel, and I'll say a few words when we bring them on. But these are the people I know that you want to see, and so without further ado, please welcome Aileen Quinton, the lady first off. And she's on my right. Mr. Ben Habib. And Baroness Kate Hoey.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. But so listen, first of all, look, thanks very much. I was talking before this started about, was I going to give, Kate was asking me, was I going to give a really lengthy introduction to everybody? No, I'm not. I'm going to give a short and snappy introduction to everybody instead. Ben, start with you. Successful businessman, which is unique compared to when we look at the current cabinet. I don't think we have anyone who's ever run a business. So,
including the business secretary,
who has no idea about business. Yeah. Obviously, Ben, former Brexit Party MEP, former co-deputy leader of Reform, and I think it's fair to say, I think most people hopefully would agree, you are a very important voice in political discourse in the UK at the moment, which I think we need. No, I seriously do think that. Kate Baroness Hoey, born in Northern Ireland, like myself and like Aileen, and the bit I wanted to, 1966 Northern Ireland high jump champion. There you go. If that's not worth a round of applause, what is? And obviously, Kate has served as Labour MP, I think from 89 to 2019. Kate, first female sports minister, breaking the glass ceiling there, and you became a life peer, a non-affiliated life peer in 2020. So that's Kate. And then here, this lady here, Aileen Quinton, who I've known a long time, another one of the Northern Ireland posse, which it turns out we've got, because Ben's kind of honorary Northern Irish as well, really. And I think we've known each other a long time. Aileen has, Aileen's mum, Alberta, was murdered by the IRA in 1987 at the cenotaph in Enniskillen, which, you know, was kind of pretty horrific thing. Poppy Day massacre. Some of you will be familiar with that, perhaps. Yeah, but nonetheless, Aileen has been a really good voice, a very great voice for the UK, for the Union of the United Kingdom, a very principled voice, which I think is, I was thinking about what unites us all here. It's principles, because if you ain't got principles, you've got nothing. And I think this is a very principled panel, and this will become apparent as we get through the evening. So, having said that little introduction, I told you it was going to be short, Kate. I told you it wouldn't take too long. I wanted to start off. Okay, so the first thing I want to chat about is the UK. One of the themes of tonight is how do we strengthen our United Kingdom? How do we make it a better United Kingdom? And I guess my question, I'll start with you, Ben, first. How do we harness the full power of the United Kingdom at a time when we've got devolution, which doesn't seem to be getting better, at a time when we've got an Irish sea border stuck up the sea, and if I'm honest, a Westminster political elite who don't seem to be remotely bothered, particularly about the United Kingdom. How do we sort it? I thought the easy one would be to start with. So how do we sort it out?
I mean, you've actually gone to the heart of the issue.
Straight away.
Because the entire political fight, if I can call it that at the moment, is for the protection of nation states. The entire Western civilization is struggling with the notion of what is a nation state. We have so become hooked on this notion that government can be for the greater good across the globe.
Yeah.
The European Union, of course, being the best example of it, because it literally wishes to strip nation states of power, empower itself, take down borders, get rid of Germany, France, Italy, and all the rest of it, and just be the European Union, a new federalist organization. But it applies to the United Kingdom, and it applies to the United States until perhaps recently. And in the UK, we are particularly hijacked by a political class that I think are ashamed of our history, that are ashamed of the people that they govern, ashamed of the fact that they have the ostensible authority to govern, and they would rather take the knee to the liberal global order than take responsibility proudly for the country, the borders, our security, the protection of our culture, the promotion of our economy, and looking for British interests and the interests of British people. And I think what we've got to do as a people, and what we as politicians should be doing, is unashamedly banging the drum for nationhood. And when I bang the drum for the United Kingdom, I bang the drum for the entire United Kingdom. It's not England. I love England, but it ain't about England. It ain't about Wales, Scotland, or Northern Ireland. It is about the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And when I bang the drum for that, I also, by the way, bang the drum for a proud independent Germany, a proud independent France, because we can't be who we are if they are not who they are. And it is through the reconnection with our democratic roots, the units of democracy that we are, and in our case the United Kingdom, that we will then stand tall and proud and prosperous. And so when we meet on the international stage, we don't meet as some intermingled morass of non-entities. We meet proudly, face to face with each other, prepared to compete, prepared to challenge each other, but also prepared to cooperate, but doing it from a position of strength. And that is the imagery that I wish our politicians could get their heads around. It's not a matter of taking the knee to the liberal order for world prosperity and peace. It's a matter of proud nation states understanding their position and cooperating from that position.
And then, Kate, if I can come to you, and as I say, we have a UK which, I mean, I think devolution splintered us. I have to say, I don't approve of devolution. But worse than that, we do have this thing called an Irish sea border, which just by definition splits us. How do we fix that?
Well, I agree with practically everything Ben said there, but the reality is that devolution has destroyed the feeling that we're all part of one country. Very much I think I was always an integrationalist as far as Northern Ireland was concerned.
Yeah.
I wanted to see perhaps a few more MPs beefing up our local councils and getting rid of the huge waste that there is at Stormont. I think the Assembly is a complete waste of time. We've seen that since it came back, how little it's achieved. As far as where we are at the moment with the protocol, I mean, we could go back and analyse how it ever happened, and much of that blame has to lie with Theresa May. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And of course, you can't differentiate the discussion about the protocol from the discussion about leaving the European Union, Brexit. And we had another debate last night in the House of Lords on one of these statutory instruments, which is the technical things that are going on about trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And the Lib Dem spokesperson, Baroness Suttie, always says during her speech, well, of course, we're here because of Brexit. And I always say in my contribution, that's absolute nonsense. We're here in terms of the problems with Northern Ireland and the protocol because Northern Ireland didn't get Brexit. And the protocol now has moved to being the winter framework, which actually made things worse, despite some people, including leaders of the Democratic Unionist Party, saying that it was better. And then we saw the reality now that there's no grace periods. We're now into how it really is going to operate, and it's going to get worse. And I genuinely cannot comprehend how so many politicians don't see the fact that this has divided us further. And as one Lord said last night, you have to actually accept that the people who are pushing this, both within the European Union and the Irish government, are doing it because they want a united Ireland. Because the logic of what's happening in Northern Ireland is being pushed further and further away from the rest of the United Kingdom. Just so many ridiculous things now about taking your pets to Northern Ireland, what you have to do, the trading issues that are coming up all the time, the fact that there is, despite all the promises, even trade from Northern Ireland to Great Britain now is bound by all the bureaucracy because we have been left in the European Union. I said last night, when I fly back to Northern Ireland every week, I am flying into the European territory as far as trade is concerned, all sorts of other areas, 300 areas of law. So there's a huge attack on democracy because Northern Ireland people now, unlike everyone else in the rest of the United Kingdom, vote knowing that their politicians aren't going to be responsible for all their laws. They are only going to be responsible for the laws that the European Union is involved in. So until we sort out the protocol, and things are moving slightly because the reality now has meant that the average person in Northern Ireland is beginning to wake up to the fact. There was a long time when it was seen as, it's not affecting me, what's this all about? It's all about business, we're not involved in business, what's this got to do with me? Now people are being affected by it personally, and we are seeing also with the change of government that the Conservatives, as they always do, and Aileen's got a lovely, come on Aileen, tell them that lovely thing about Conservatives.
Yeah, give it your story, yeah.
It's just a phrase that my father used to say. It's the Tories are never as bad in opposition as they are when they're in power, and Labour's never as bad in power as it is when they're in opposition. But that was But the Tories are still that bad, but Labour doesn't anymore.
I want to get into say that because what's happening now, of course, the Conservatives, because they have been so badly defeated, they're looking at absolutely everything, and they are beginning to recognise that the protocol winter framework has been destructive, not just in Northern Ireland but in the whole of the UK. And so when there was a statutory instrument a couple of weeks ago in the Commons, the one that we were debating last night, 76 MPs voted for Jim Allister from the Traditional Unionist Voices motion, including the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, including the Home Secretary and a few other members of Cabinet. That would not have happened under Rishi Sunak. and I think the Conservatives have a kind of plan to slowly change things. So I'm quite, I'm hopeful. I'm not as negative about it now, in that there are some peers and some, I'm afraid, members of the Northern Ireland Assembly who will say, oh, there's nothing we can do. Let's just suck it up. Let's just get on with things. And what people want is the health service and all of that. Fundamentally, to me, is that until we have sorted this out, until we've got back, the union is really, really threatened, not just by what's happening in Scotland, because that seems to have gone down a bit, but definitely. So it's almost a question of education, because you just feel people on the whole switch off when Northern Ireland's mentioned in Great Britain, and I don't have the answer to how we can do more. But if you believe in the union, then you can't leave Northern Ireland out, and you can't allow it to be drifting away.
I mean, in terms of having to live sort of 24/7 in a part of the UK which is actually now semi-detached from the rest of the UK. I mean, what's that like?
Well, I mean, it's obviously it's not acceptable, and for all sorts of reasons. But first, I'd just like to say it is really great that we have got English people and there's Welsh and Scottish people who care about the whole union, because I don't just care about Northern Ireland. And if there's any Welsh people here, I always feel bad for the Welsh that they're not included in the union flag, and I would like even a wee dragon just like just to say.
Have we got any Welsh in the room? If you're Welsh, put your hand up. Yeah, we have. Very good.
I'd like you to have
the dragons for you.
I'd like you to have a wee dragon in the middle, but it is important that actually everybody in our country should care about our whole country, because that's the best way to prosperity in any way. And I would not support Wales being treated like Northern Ireland has, or England being treated, or Scotland being treated like that. But and there's a danger because of my background that all I talk about is terrorism, but actually in this it is very, very key, because as far as I am concerned, we have an awful lot of moral cowardice in our governments, successive governments. And that is a threat not just to Northern Ireland, but it has made us even more vulnerable to other terrorism. You have to get a consistent approach to terrorism. And as far as I am concerned, so much that has happened to Northern Ireland and in Northern Ireland happens because the IRA murdered enough people. And that should not be, terrorism should not rule the roost. Terrorism should not drive should drive is your security policy and the criminal, the jail term for people who commit it. It should not be pandered to. And I think that the United Kingdom has got the reputation of being a soft touch for terrorism, and that makes us vulnerable to all sorts of different terrorism. Because you get into one breed of terrorism, you've encouraged all sorts of terrorism. And one of the things too that I am absolutely appalled, I don't know if people were aware of when Leo Varadkar, when he was campaigning against having proper customs checks at the actual border between the United Kingdom and the EU, was sort of putting up pictures of bomb attacks at the border. But he wasn't saying, and we will not tolerate such a threat. You not say those responsible for this will be fined and will have consequences. He was putting it up as an actual reason for not having checks at a border post, giving terrorists a veto. All the combined terrorist threats should have no more power to influence anything except, as I say, security strategy, that one person's vote should have more potential to change things. And one of the stories that I can tell is, I'm a Brexiteer as well as a unionist. Proper Brexit, not what we have now, which I call trans Brexit. Trans means not real Brexit. So yes, the trans Brexit. But I said, no, I am a Brexiteer, and I was having lunch with two friends of mine. And this was around the time that all these discussions were going on about what would be done about, Northern Ireland, whatever, about Brexit. And between us, we had three of us. Between us, we've had 5 parents murdered by the IRA. The other 2, both their parents murdered in the Enniskillen bomb. And we were not greatly pleased by the idea, not just had terrorism taken our parents, but it was about to take our votes as well. And that should not happen. That absolutely should not happen. Another illustration is David Liddington put an article in one of the papers, I can't remember what it was, saying that Theresa May went against the idea of no-deal Brexit because of the threat of violence. Again, a veto to terrorism. Terrorism should not have that power. And if the message that we have sent out to terrorists is the UK is a soft touch for terrorism.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, I suppose trying to move things on a wee bit, Ben, we've seen a lot of change across the other side of the Atlantic in the past 4 weeks with the ascension of Trump 2.0. And it's always good to have something positive, isn't it? And I look across there, and you mentioned nation states and whatnot, and you can see at least the attempt to reassert America, the United States, as a proper nation with defined borders and taking control of everything. And I look over there and I see hope. And you sort of think to yourself, well, how can the UK emulate that? Because surely that's where we need to go. Like you say, make ourselves a proper nation, sovereign state, which we were supposed to be post-Brexit, except it wasn't Brexit. Trans-Brexit, yeah. I mean, so, Ben, what's your thoughts on, first of all, what you see happening across in the US?
So can I reverse a bit, because I've gathered myself since your first question.
Given you time, yeah.
That was a big question, the first one. And I just want to say how pleased I am to be here, to be in front of all of you, who I just assume by nature are Brexiteers, nationists, and unionists. So thank you very much. I want to thank Aileen for dragging me into Northern Irish politics. I had been very comfortable in my London English shell, but she took me to Northern Ireland back in 2019, actually after a debate very close to here, in the Irish Centre. Were you there, Kate? I can't remember. You were there, Aileen, weren't you, at the Irish Centre? Well, perhaps you weren't. Anyway, there were a bunch of Republicans. There were a lot of Republicans in the audience. And I was trying to make the case for Brexit, and they were all making the arguments you were making about, resurgence of violence and so on. Yeah. And
sorry, those were not my arguments against Brexit.
No, but the arguments that you've been citing. And Aileen said, come on the border trail. So she took me to Northern Ireland, I did the border trail. And of course, it's 320 odd miles of border which actually no one could police or put a hard border on. But we somehow took the knee to the fact that a hard border in Northern Ireland was not acceptable, but a hard border between Great Britain and another part of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, was fine. And it's symptomatic of our weak political class.
Yeah.
But before I come back, I just want to thank Kate as well, because Aileen introduced me to the issue that is Northern Ireland, and Kate has held me absolutely solidly on the subject. And I was
just going to say, because I think it's important to know, Aileen was a candidate in London for the Brexit Party.
Yeah.
The bottom of the list, although all her friends in Enniskillen thought she was going to win. Ben was number 2, weren't you?
Number one.
Number one, sorry. And they met during that, and that was the sort of beginning of it all. And then
I met you. I met you on the border trail.
Yeah, we came on the border trail.
And
there's a joke with Ben. I don't know if there's a joke anymore, but because he gets such flack for defending Northern Ireland, that he must have a wee ailing doll that he's sticking pins. But one of the last times I asked him, and I think he does.
well, I mean, it's a very interesting issue, Northern Ireland. I'm going to come to it.
Yeah, we'll
if I just freewheel a little bit.
Freewheel is our style, Ben.
Northern Ireland is a really interesting issue because there are many people in the United Kingdom who feel patriotic, who look at the Union flag and they think that is my flag. They're enamoured by it. They move forward by it. But very few people really even understand Northern Ireland, even bother to consider it as part of the United Kingdom. It's kind of there. They're always bloody whining. It's a bit of a pain in the neck. They cost £8,000 per head per annum for the budget, and they're ignored. And when I went there, it was a wake-up call to me, Aileen, and it was the beginning. I was always a Brexiteer, but it was the beginning of a journey of discovery about how weak our political class is, how prepared our political class is to be insular and take the knee, literally take the knee to terrorism. And if you're prepared to take the knee to terrorism, of course you're going to take the knee to the EU, aren't you? Because the minute they threaten a bit of trade sanctions, they threaten, well, we're going to pull this lever and that lever, you just back off. So we have a fantastically, I think, switched on electorate, because we were the first nation in Western civilization to scream out and say, we want our country back. That's what the vote to leave the EU was. It was a vote to get our country back. But our politicians didn't have the courage to do it. In fact, they stood in opposition to us. And they still stand in opposition to us. And what they don't get is that in order for us to, I'm slightly repeating what I said in the first segment, but in order for us to, for us all collectively to go forward prosperously, they need to understand what the democratic unit of the United Kingdom is. You can't represent British interests if you don't know what the United Kingdom is. And they don't. And so when you look across to the US, this is coming to you.
No, you're right,
When you look across to the US, sorry, that could go on forever, by the way. When you look across to the US, you see for the first time, when I was watching the election overnight, and I thought, oh, here we go again. He looks like he's going to win, and at the last minute, something's going to go really weird in those swing states. And then he won, and I thought, oh, I'll go to sleep and I'll get some sleep now. And then I woke up and I was going into the office, and it was only as I was driving into the office, as I was putting together in my mind the implications of a Trump victory, that I suddenly felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time, a Western civilized country had decided that it would put its country first. It was it's something we should all take for granted, but it was a remarkable thing. And it wasn't just any Western civilized country, it was the most powerful country in the world. And the most powerful country in the world didn't just promise to do it, he bloody well did it on his first day in office. So let me just do this very briefly, what he enumerated. We are going to detain and deport all illegal migrants. There isn't a politician in the United Kingdom, including who has the courage to say that. Not a single politician in the United Kingdom. He said we're going to ditch DEI. There are a few politicians who are brave enough to say that, but we haven't heard it from the top of the Conservative Party, have we? Ditching DEI. He said we're going to ditch net zero. He did it in his own inimicable way, which was, drill, baby, drill, which conjures up all sorts of images. But we haven't got a leading member of Parliament saying that either. No. And he talked about strong borders, deregulation, lower taxes, and he talked about something which no one in this country is talking about, which is tariffs. You know what offshoring your industry is all about? Giving over your ability to produce stuff in the United Kingdom to another country? It's not about global prosperity. It is basically reverse immigration. instead of bringing cheap labour here to make stuff, we give them the opportunity to take our businesses away, make stuff for us, and sell it back to us, denuding us of the ability to make it here and protect our own interests. So if there was a war, for example, tomorrow, we don't have the capacity to make the steel required for the ships and tanks and so on that we would need. Global trade, the way it's unfolded, like all other things that have been extreme globalism, is deeply dangerous. And Trump gets it. This is the age of tariffs. We need to row back from this overall integration at a global level. Everything Trump said on day one, even if you don't like the man, even if you think he expresses himself in a peculiar way, was absolutely spot on. And we don't have politicians in this country who've got the guts to say it. But now that he's done it, he is going to have a resurgent United States of America. It is going to stand tall. It is going to become culturally sound. It is going to be economically supercharged. And if the United Kingdom and Western Europe doesn't wake up to that, if Europe doesn't wake up to that, we will be overblown with a tsunami with which we will not cope. Because all the capital that would otherwise perhaps come to the UK and Europe will go to the States. Why would it come here, where energy costs are 3 or 4 times what they are in the States, where taxes are twice the level, where regulation is mad, and the Prime Minister can't tell a woman from a man? It's... Sorry, I've gone on long enough.
No.
So I take great hope from the presidency.
I was just going to say on that last comment, I was out in Washington, and one of the things that when I went to one of the rallies was the most important thing that Trump actually said to me, for me, was when he said very straightforwardly, very straight, from today there will be no men in women's sport. Biggest cheers, and I mean that whole sort of idea on the trans issue where he was prepared to be straight out and speak out is again another example of politicians in our country not being prepared. And what I came back with was, you know, I don't agree with every single thing that Trump said, but what I came back with was this feeling that it did give a bit of hope to what could happen, because when you look at what he had to go through, and you know, forgetting all the trials and whatever he's done in his past and all of that, and the media that was against him, and the way in which, you know, our media would never say a good word about him, and didn't even after they find it so difficult to accept that he'd won, and yet they were able to come through and win. And I came back thinking, and I think anyone else who was there probably came back thinking, you know, when he made those speeches, just who is there in this country, in any political party, that could stand up and get that?
Do you think, though, that with Trump being what he is now, and with the regime being what it is, do you think that might encourage any of our lot elected at the moment to be more courageous and brave? Or will they still be craven and cards?
I think it will, but we do tend to have this in sort of almost a British kind of thing about, you know, on the one hand, on the other, and maybe we should think about it, and yes, and it's very difficult, and you know, we never just say this is wrong, let's just change it. You know, that doesn't happen. But I think it, and we have, you know, we have some politicians who may well be influenced. My worry, and I have to be honest, is that Trump, you know, if he doesn't deliver, if he doesn't do what he says he's done, and some of his promises he's made have been very wide-ranging, and if that doesn't happen, then that is going to be another huge nail in the idea of, you know, of politicians doing what they say. Because what Trump could do, if he does carry out all the things he said, whether you agree with them or not, is give a lesson to people that, yes, if you do what you say, the public will support you. Yeah,
I mean, do you think, Aileen, that Donald Trump's election is going to be is that going to be a force for good for us in the UK?
I think it's a few fascinating things about the Trump victory. I am sort of on Twitter that I follow a lot of detransitioners and things like that, and a whole lot of these people, people who have can't transition because you can't change your sex, but that they've been hoodwinked into this thing, and some of them have had been mutilated, but they are now realising that they are what they were born and whatever, and a whole lot of them would have said they came from the left. But then now that Trump is the one that so they're having to reassess who they are and where they fit on the political spectrum. But that was one of the main things. I mean, I was never that warm, disposed to Trump, but that was one of the things that I just felt that a Kamala Harris victory was a danger to vulnerable young people. And not just in America, but young people everywhere, because the thing about if the US gets a cold, there may be a time delay, but we start sneezing. So I actually think British confused kids are safer now because of a Trump win, and it shouldn't have to be It's controversial to say that you can't change sex and that there are only two sexes. How did we get into that madness that that's even a thing to be debated? So I actually think, and I don't see, and for a long time haven't seen things in terms of right and left. I just think those labels don't work. For me, it comes down to, but that's why kind of the thing about Ben saying you're going to unite the right. Well, I say, unite the right as opposed to wrong, instead of right as opposed to left. I think it's woke. It's woke is the enemy, not left or right. And I think there are a lot of traditional Labour people, traditional patriotic Labour people that are anti-woke too. And I think it's about that maybe there is an excitement and a potential to actually harness that. We can have people that are strong into, in businesses and say, we do businesses, we need to have strong businesses because that grow the economy. But also people that have a focus on, on workers, work-life balance and all that, but still recognising the business has to be profitable. Let's have all of those voices into it. And they say to me, it's not left or right, it's woke and anti-woke, and I'm team anti-woke.
So, just a couple of things just for me. I just wanted to add in there. First of all, I'm a big Trump fan, unambiguously, unapologetically. I remember back in 2015, the BBC were looking for someone to come on and argue for Trump, and they brought me in as the cannon fodder. But I had the last laugh, Ben. So that's the first thing. Second thing is what I love about. And this is what has to happen here, I think, as well. It's not just Donald Trump. I mean, there's a Vice President, Vance, who I quite like the sound of. He was in an interview. I don't know if you saw it the other day, and he was being asked on the topic of migration. Yeah. And the interviewer, typical left-wing Harridan, was having a go at him. And I think he used an expression like, frankly, Margaret, I don't care. Because she was saying, but what about? Yeah. And isn't that what we need? But we need that directness, which is missing entirely.
We do. So I just want to endorse what you said, Aileen. It's not left or right, but it's quite a mouthful to say I want to unite the anti-liberal, globalist, socialist order. It's much easier.
It's not a catchy phrase.
Right as opposed to wrong.
And also right is actually a dangerous word, because the minute you accept that you're right wing, it's a hop and a skip and a slippery slope to the Prime Minister saying you're far right. And so I'm completely aware of the risks of that misnomer. But sorry, just remind me, what was your question?
Well, I'll keep going, Ben. The fact is that I think in the States we have a regime, not just an individual.
Yeah.
And it goes right the way through. Yeah.
So I've just set something up or I haven't set it up. It was set up by a lady called Claire Bullivant, but I've just agreed to chair it. And it's called the Great British Political Action Committee, which is almost as bad as having to say anti-liberal, globalist, socialist.
Fewer words.
The Great British Political Action Committee is not a think tank. It is a pressure group. It will raise money, and it will give politicians 4 Ps. The first P is a political philosophical framework, because they seem to lack it. They don't seem to understand that which it is that they're meant to be doing. And effectively, our philosophical political framework is going to be unashamedly pro-nation, pro-British interests, strong borders, a proud, sovereign, prosperous United Kingdom. That's the fundamental building block. And we wish to move, in order to get our politicians to that very basic level, we are going to move the centre of gravity of acceptable political discourse from where it is at the moment, where Kate was discussing, on the one hand, on the other, where he may be a man, may look like a man, he may feel like a man, but actually he's a woman, that kind of thing. Give the politicians that we've got the courage to be straight talking, because we're not going to win this battle until our politicians can actually call a duck, a man, a woman, a man, a woman, a woman. So we've got to move that centre of gravity. The second P in our mission is to produce policies that support that. The third P is to find people who are capable of delivering those policies, because as you may have noticed, we have a bunch of monkeys mostly in the House of Parliament, and the civil service is even worse. And,
much worse, actually.
So the third P is people. So it's political framework, philosophy framework, policies, people, and then the last one is a plan. So between now and 2029, we are going to not just get all the thoughts together and get the people ready. We are going to have a draft legislative framework, which at day one we can hit the road with running. And I don't care whether it's Kenny Badenoch who does it, or my mate Nigel who does it, or a combination of Nige and Kemi in a coalition. I don't care. This isn't about party politics anymore. This is about rescuing the United Kingdom. And we're not going to plead with Nige or with Kemi. We're going to put pressure on both of them. This is a move to unite the so-called right, but through pressure, not through being nice, not saying, please, if you give me a peerage at some point, I might do this and I might do that, and can we just collaborate? This is going to be, listen, buddy, this is what you need to do, and we're calling you out. We see what you're saying. For example, it ain't a great look, is it? Having a party until 3 a.m. drinking crew with the richest people in the United Kingdom when we're all suffering. Revisit the optics of what you're doing and the fundamental basis on which you're doing it. And that's the kind of thing we're going to be doing in the Great British Pack.
And Ben, just for everyone in the audience, so that's the Great British Pack. It's on, there's an X account, a Twitter account, Great British Pack, and I would invite, hopefully everyone, if you're not following it, please follow it and register, as well, because it is about trying to put that momentum in. As I think I just briefly I think, and we touched on this earlier with Richard as well, it is about us bringing principles and ideas into play, and not so much focusing on just personality.
No, absolutely, it's principles and whatever, but it is personalities that deliver principles.
That's true.
And if you haven't got a political framework, a philosophical political framework on which you hang your policies, you're defeated at day one. You have to have that building block so that when a new problem presents itself, let's take COVID, which is a new problem that presented itself. Boris Johnson used to liken COVID, the fight against COVID, to World War II. Did you remember he said that? This is like World War II.
Yeah, when he thought it was Churchill.
It was the opposite of World War II. Because in World War II, we gave up our lives to save our civil liberties.
Yeah.
In COVID, we gave up our civil liberties to save our lives.
Yeah.
And that is how far we have fallen. So we've got to direct the politicians. And if we find individuals in significantly important positions talking nonsense, they have to be called out. Because that's the only way we're going to put the discourse right. We're in a position now in the country. Let's just take another example. We've got Paul here. I'm going to talk about Paul Thorpe's, something that's very close to Paul Thorpe's heart. There are some politicians in this country, including myself, who recognise that we have a two-tier criminal justice system. Who accepts? Who in this room thinks we've got a two-tier criminal justice system? Everyone. Do you think that when the Palestinian marches were taking place and they were calling for violence against a democratically settled state in the Middle East, that they were offensive to our laws, our culture and our people?
Yep.
Do you think that some of them perhaps should have been challenged by the police?
Yes.
So do you think that if we've got a criminal justice system that's two-tiered, that it won't also work not just to let off people from ethnic minorities who shouldn't be let off, but it would work against the white settled majority and would incarcerate people who shouldn't be incarcerated, that there may be political prisoners in this country? Do you think that's possible through a two-tier criminal justice? Hands up if you think that's possible. So you don't find there is not a single leader of any political party in this country who will stand up for the white individual, British citizen, who's been locked up as a political prisoner. And there are at least 70 who were locked up after the Southport protests because of stuff they put on Twitter or stuff they put on a placard or what they said to a policeman. We don't have the courage as a political class to stand up for our people.
No, you're right. Actually,
yeah, sorry.
It's two-tier care, two-tier justice, two-tier policing. It's across the piece, two-tier. But I mean,
it's also the length now that government and indeed opposition are going to in terms of hate crime generally.
Scary.
And the laws that are being pushed through to make it very, very difficult for people to actually work out what have they said that has been now told that they're going to be checked up on. And I mean, we had the very useful action by Alison Phillips when she was stopped. I mean, that was a very, I think that, a high-profile person like that, and that's where you're right about, we do need people sometimes who are well-known to speak out. And she doing that brought it to so many people's attention, just the nonsense of the police spending time over things like that. But, even the Labour government has begun to roll back on some of the changes that we managed through the Lords in particular. I mean, I wouldn't just say something about the Lords. I know we're all seen as sort of, decrepit people who should be all sort of taken away, but the reality is, in the Lords, you do get some proper discussion and detail, and even some of the, what I would call the more establishment members of the House of Lords, when it comes to the detail of a bill, we'll check it and we'll look at, and we did get some changes to the original online safety bill, but now Labour is wanting to roll back on that. And again, the example from America of what Trump did. Now, I don't know the detail of the people that were put in prison there when they had the previous election. I mean, I don't know who. Some of them were involved in city violence things. You could see from the pictures. But the fact that he came in and simply said, "Right, you're all out," that sent a message. Now, can you ever visualise that happening in our country?
Not at the moment, but I mean, that's a good point to make. The January 6th, as Trump called them, hostages, political hostages. Uses words quite carefully. I know we touched on that as well. But I mean, that's the sort of boldness of action that we see in the States. And, I believe, I don't know if you think.
Are you going to be a membership organisation? How is it going to work?
Yeah, no, so the policies that I mentioned are going to be made through a platform. So anyone who wishes to contribute to our policy making, please register on our website, and then you can put your ideas forward for policies. And what is bizarre, actually, Kate, is unknown to me, the individuals who created the website actually put the ability to donate on it. I hadn't expected the ability to donate being made available so early on. And we got £2,000 of donations without even asking for anything. And it's because people are just desperate for the country to be put right. And they can see that this is going to be I hope they can see, and I hope we can deliver a really good pressure that we'll be able to apply on our political class to move the dial in favour of, a proper nation state, etc.
I mean, you're trying to shift the Overton window fundamentally.
And this is where Musk and Trump and others, they're miles ahead of us. They look at us and they think, what the hell are you guys up to? For God's sake, get a grip. And we haven't got the courage to get a grip. Sorry, Aidan.
No, I just wondered, when you talked about having some Ps for politicians, and I just was wondering whether one of them was going to be a P45. But does that apply to MPs? I don't even know.
Well, we've got to make sure the Labour Party get their P45 at the next election.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing about it is that, though, and this is a question that somebody actually sent in. I'll start with you, Aileen, in this one first. We've got a first past the post parliamentary system. That makes life difficult, does it? Like, in that system, how do we get change?
Well, I have been anti first past the post system since I was about 13, and my father sat me down and showed me how it worked. But I am also not in favour of PR, which, but I actually do like the system we have in Northern Ireland, which is a single transferred vote, because with PR, I don't think there's any way of doing PR that you don't have a list system. And I object to anybody taking any part of my vote for person A and giving it to person B just because they're the same party. If I was living in Vauxhall, when Kate was an MP, I'd be voting for her. But the notion that they would take any surplus, even a part of surplus, to elect somebody like Corbyn or McDonald, no, I want, and I think parties have too much power anyway. I'd like, the voter has more power, has less power with PR. It's the parties that hold the power. So I actually, and the thing about being a sore loser with the Brexit vote, I'm still a sore loser about AV. I really think that would have been a great system. But there has actually been a generation, I think, since we had that vote. So I think first past the post is wrong. Is how can you really say that you've got a mandate when most people who voted for somebody else?
Some of us here don't know what AV is.
Sorry. There was, and actually the stupid point, because I talked about this to people, and they've completely forgotten there was a referendum to change the voting system. And it was a very simplified version. It was just, I think you got two options. So if you're first person, and it meant that you could take a risk. This is actually the person I want to vote in, but with first past the post, I can't, because there's too much danger. So you could vote for, this person that you think's not going to get many votes.
One alternative.
But then you had another choice, so that then you could have your safe vote. So if your person got eliminated, you at least, your vote went to the other person, so that you've got more chance of keeping a bad guy out. And I think that would have been, a step forward.
Go ahead, Kate.
Well, I'm slightly different on Aileen in this. One of the great things that happened during the Brexit referendum, of course, was that people thought their vote actually mattered. They knew that their vote mattered because it was actually going to be counted. And that made a lot of people come out and vote who'd never voted before. I mean, that was really, really important. The problem is, what we've seen, of course, in a lot of seats is that obviously that's a Labour seat, that's a Conservative seat, that must be a Lib Dem seat. It was sort of almost... But when we look at what's happened recently, and we've seen that a Conservative majority of 80, or it wasn't 80, I remember when that happened thinking, oh my goodness, that's, I was pleased obviously that Boris got a majority of 80, but I remember thinking, well, that means that's going to be at least 2, maybe even 3 general elections before there's a change of government, and that gives some certainty and some stability. What happened? People said no, and that 80 majority went to a majority of what, 170 something by Labour. So I don't think we should underestimate the power of people to actually change things if they want to change things. And of course that's what obviously Reform is hoping, that they will get enough votes. It's always been the Lib Dems and smaller parties that wanted to change the system because they thought they had no chance. But it only takes some change for the public to realise that their vote can change. So I, as a Member of Parliament for 30 years, I like the fact that I was elected and that I represented everybody, and that I certainly think a list system is appalling. That's the European way, where somebody becomes a minister in a European government and immediately the party just plucks somebody out, the one who's most in with the leader, and put into that position. I want MPs to be elected by they're not put in by their party. So I have to end up by basically saying I was in favour of, not rushing around to jump up and down about it, but I don't think we need to change our system. We need to change the way people vote, and they'd only do that if they're going to vote for what they believe in.
Well, just further to that, Ben, I mean, I saw an opinion poll come out, I think today, which showed Reform on about 3 points ahead of any of the other parties, and 27-28% or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think, under the system we have, which is the system we're going to have in 2029, do you think that if there was a sufficient swing to, say, Reform, that would be able to deliver a Reform government in 2029?
So I just want to endorse what Kate said. And I want to nod to my son, Max, who's here, because he is much more political philosopher than I am. I've learnt my politics on the hoof, but what Max will say, and what I have come to completely agree with, is that we've got to be very careful with small r reform. I don't mean reform the party, but small r reform.
Yeah.
Dramatic reform is dangerous for the organism that is the United Kingdom. Our democracy has emerged over hundreds of years to be what it was, and I think one of the great shames of the last 30 years is the dramatic changes made by successive governments to the way our democracy operates. And we were quite a stable, and that's why the world used to look at us and say, what a great, the mother of democracies, look at how stable the United Kingdom is. We've had too much change too quickly over the last few years, and first past the post system, or something like first past the post, is the only way we will get change. And we need a 180-degree change in the way the country's being governed. If we have PR, what you will get is a mishmash of lots of different people. Wheeling and dealing, and you never get what you vote for. You're going to get some kind of behind-the-scenes deal, which is not good for the country. We need a 180-degree change in direction, and the only way to do it is through something like first past the post, which is our system. I would not go to the European model. Geert Wilders, for example, won the majority in the Netherlands. He couldn't form a government. Same in Austria. And so, first past the post for me. Reform on a shoestring, Reform UK now, capital R. Reform UK on a shoestring came second in 98 seats in the general election in 2024, and it won 5 seats. 3 months before the election, I was on news channels and they were saying, you're just spoilers, you're just going to split the vote, you won't get seats. We came, if there'd been a swing, I think of 100,000 votes in total in the last election towards Reform, we would have had something like 100 seats. And I just want to bring it back to Northern Ireland. The DUP, do you know how many votes the DUP got? 172,000 votes. It got 5 MPs. Reform, I was going to say we, Reform got, it was we then, Reform got 4 million votes and we got 5 seats. Another 100,000 and we would have had 100 odd seats. But it is within shooting distance now. And so it is doubly vital that come 2029, we make sure that the so-called anti-liberal, globalist, socialist order wins the day. That's what we've got to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think a guy you mentioned, Elon Musk, has had quite an impact on British politics in the past month, in particular, with some of the things he's come out and talked about, the various issues to do with Britain. And I think that the power of social media is quite a thing, Eileen, you know. And I wonder, do you think that, like Ben talked about, you've reformed it in a shoestring. I mean, Elon's got a few pounds in his back pocket. If he wanted to give 100 million or whatever, I guess that would be within his remit. Would you agree? Would you approve of that?
I mean, you mean giving it to a particular party or whatever? Yeah. I'm just very wary, especially when there isn't an election imminently, about putting all of our eggs in any political party basket.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's a good principle anyway, because if you put all your, if I think about the eggs as being the principles, the policies, the direction, the values, you need to be able to protect those eggs, and one basket can get compromised. Somebody can burn, set light to the basket. So I think we have to find a way of, first of all, identifying the eggs. What are our values? What are the principles? What needs to be done? And then have a way of being flexible and protect those eggs. So if we're at the moment, this looks like the best basket, but have a way that if that looks like that's not working out, to be able to protect those eggs and put them somewhere else, rather than the whole thing going up. Because I've seen it with different things in Northern Ireland, things that this is a great thing, this is happening and this is great, and people get behind it. To know that actually, I think we're being gaslit a bit. We're made to feel that something is happening, so the right thing and the needful thing can't happen, because when people wake up to the fact that something has been compromised, it's too late. And even if people start off as individuals within a party or a movement, I just don't trust even government to blackmail people. I don't, call me a conspiracy theorist, but I just don't trust governments anymore, and I don't trust them not to put pressure, undue pressure.
Yeah, you're right.
Identify our eggs, identify a few potential baskets, and let's have a way of being flexible enough to recognise this basket's in danger. We need to protect the eggs and put it to another basket, and not let any basket become too important or become the only means of saving us, because if it is, that basket will get attacked. We have to have other ways and be more flexible about it.
I mean, that's a fair point, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think social media, which you mentioned in your question, is going to be just so much more important than it's ever been before. And we saw that. It's interesting, you probably saw the press officer in Trump's administration announced this week that the lobby thing where they have the press, they're letting in all the different social media operators,
new media,
blogs, people like that. He's basically saying, the mainstream media can't be trusted. The mainstream media is just, is always going to be against what we're wanting to do. I mean, I was quite pleased when I saw that Sky looks like it's not going to do.
Sky News that's good news.
Work so well, and I think that we are, all politicians now and political parties are going to turn more and more to getting a really, really good social media, because it's what young people. And young people ultimately are going to be the voters, and they're the ones who are doing that. On the money thing, I must admit I would be a little concerned if Elon Musk turned around and actually delivered.
I agree. It would be very concerning.
I just think we have to be careful if we want to be, an independent country, a country that we shouldn't expect other rich people in other countries. If he was living here and he was actually seeing himself as partly British, maybe to get some contribution. But I don't think overall it's a good thing to...
I don't think you can make the case for an independent, sovereign United Kingdom and then invite foreign powers to interfere in our democracy. I completely agree with you. Completely.
I mean, I can see how, the Treasurer of Reform, who I have no idea who it is, sitting there thinking, gosh, this would be wonderful. But, the long-term disadvantage.
Elon Musk and Trump are going to put the interests of the US first, and I don't blame them for that. That's their job. That's what they're expected to do. Why should we expect them to put our interests first? The thing I do think, though, is that at the moment I get a great flavour that a lot of things that Trump is quite happy to go along with actually are in our interest too.
Yeah.
I have no doubt, though, that if they cease to be, he'd go with his interests. But where our interests do align, let's go for that. But that's not, I don't mean that means taking all their money.
I agree with you. No, I agree with you. But I think there is something greater happening here. He is recognizing the need for the United States to be put first, make America great again. But there's a fear in the United States that Europe is falling, that the United Kingdom is falling, and they know it's in their interest to make sure we don't fall. And that's why Elon Musk is being so interventionist on X. And that kind of intervention's fine. Yeah. A foreign politician saying, get your act together, I think is fine. Yeah. I'm very happy with that. But the money thing is different.
Yeah, no, I think that is fair. I think Elon does have a British grandmother, I think. Yeah. So there is a sort of a link to the UK, which I think Trump was also. Question actually, quick, Ben, just on this. Ben, would you welcome Donald Trump putting tariffs on the UK?
I think if that was a necessary move for the protection and promotion of the United States, it is something we need to understand and accept. And what we shouldn't do is rail against him and rush off as our Prime Minister is to meet Macron and meet Scholz and meet von der Leyen and say, what can we do to fight Trump? What they should do is say, right, the world order's changed, the economic landscape has changed. What does the United Kingdom need to do to protect and promote our prosperity?
Distance ourselves from the European Union.
Distance ourselves from the European Union.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Because, Kate, just on that, I get the clear impression that the Trump regime is not friendly orientated towards the European Union, and the UK is going to find itself. You're going to have to make a choice, are we
Absolutely.
Not? You choose, the US or the EU. Make a choice. Where should we choose?
He's already said that. Starmer's already said it, hasn't he? He wants to back the EU. You can hear. He wants to get us through.
But that brings us back to the point then. So maybe if Donald Trump did put tariffs on the UK, Starmer might want to think very hard about that, because the US is a global superpower. I mean, we actually saw a small.
The EU, can I just rephrase, is a sinking global superpower.
Oh, the EU is, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But we saw Trump just there earlier this week. So much happens. Absolutely humiliate Colombia. Because of the threat.
That was between the 6th hole and the 8th hole.
Yeah, I know.
He did all of that.
I know.
He did literally. He did all of that between the 6th hole and the 8th hole. He brought Colombia to its knee. Yeah. While he was playing a round of golf. Isn't that bloody awesome?
That's incredible. It was incredible. Yeah.
Have you actually been to any Trump rallies?
No. I don't go to the States much.
But Kate was there. You were there for the inauguration. Kate was there for the inauguration.
The rallies are amazing. Anyone who's been to them. But you get a great sense of them on television as well. It's the razzmatazz. A lot of that has been copied by Reform, and even during the rallies during Brexit.
It's simply not our style.
Sorry.
It is simply not our style in the UK, and that is
we did do a bit of that during the big rallies that we did all around the country, from the Leave EU campaign, during with the sort of music and Nigel loves that. Nigel really does enjoy that, so you can see Reform doing. Whether it actually helps, I think maybe you're right that there's some British kind of sitting back and being a little bit more careful, they won't really like it.
Yeah, so, I just say at the moment there's this huge chasm opened up between the US and the UK under Starmer. But another question.
Let's see if Trump delivers. You see, I mean, Chagos Islands is a classic example. He hasn't said anything yet on that, and he should be. And if I had my way, I would get him to stop all that 4 days of Irish Blarney on St Patrick's Day. I mean, he should be coming to Ireland if it's St Patrick's Day, not everybody's swarming off to Washington to wine and dine. Sorry, that's nothing to do with the question.
No, but I mean, I just think that the changes are so dramatic, and the UK is going to meet an unstoppable force in the form of the United States.
And we may experience pain to start with.
Yeah.
There will be economic, if we don't ditch net zero and we don't therefore cheapen our energy, we don't liberate our businesses, we will experience pain because money will go to the States. Yeah. And bright people will go to the States. And so we will have pain to start with. But it's the kind of tough love that we need. We need a good kick in the arse so that we do the right thing. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that, Ben. I think.
But can I just say, let's just you mentioned Colombia. I want to just quickly say this. Do you think that by giving the thick end of £1 billion to the French to stop illegal migration from their shores, how do you think that compares to saying, if you don't stop this illegal migration, we're going to withdraw your fishing licenses and we're going to impose sanctions on champagne? It's obvious, isn't it? The answer's obvious. Impose tariffs on champagne, French wine, and take back the fishing licenses and say, there's a camera on me, but you can use what, again, my son taught me, which is the sign from Agincourt, when a longbowman wanted to show the French that he still possessed his arrow fingers, he would do that. And we could stand on the shores facing France and we could all do that. Exactly right.
I raised it and I got a waffly answer. I mean, it is shocking. We're giving all that money to France, and yet they allow all those thousands of people to live in pretty disgraceful conditions on the French side, in tents with the rain coming through, give them nothing, don't do anything. No wonder they want to come across that dangerous journey. It's the pull factor of us being, so nice. I went down to see where people arrived a couple of years ago, and I was even then astonished at what happened when all those predominantly young men, although there was one, I think they said down there that they always put one female on each boat so that there's somebody that's not a single male. And they were just being treated, I don't want them to be treated harshly in any way, but they were immediately given some wonderful new clothing, better than most of our young people have. All of that.
Yeah.
Shocking. And we're paying France all that money. And what we haven't talked about is how those people who are here genuinely and are genuine asylum seekers are assimilated in a way that gives us true integration. Because that's where America is slightly different from us. America has integrated. They all in their schools still, I checked this out, all of them, wherever they've come from, they sing the national anthem. They're made to be proud of being American. They may want to keep their culture and their language somewhere in their family, but we don't do any of that. So no wonder we have all these sort of gangs of people up assimilating, and what we got with the Pakistani.
Well, actually, Kit, that actually leads me on to what I was going to say. Ben, you mentioned the French, but I mean, I saw this exchange on your Twitter, I think, the other day. I mean, Pakistan, so Trump absolutely sorted out Colombia, and they instantly sort of collapsed. We send, I think, Pakistan, I think it was 40 million going up to 120 million. Yeah. It's vast sums of money, which... And what do we get? Well, we seem to be getting quite a few of Pakistani rape gangs.
Yeah, so can I just say something? Sorry.
And I did see you made your response in that, but just explain that we have the means already to do something, but we don't do it.
My dad's Pakistani, and I've had the pleasure of having to fight litigation in Pakistan recently, and which is a very difficult thing to do. But through the litigation, I got to know a very senior individual in one of Pakistan's law enforcement agencies. So when I was reading about the grooming gangs and all the rape gangs, actually, you shouldn't call them grooming gangs.
Rape gangs. Yeah.
It's torture rape gangs.
Gang rape gangs.
Gang rape gangs. And I said to him, look, you know, there's a really... And by the way, Pakistan abhors. Pakistanis generally abhor the raping of little girls. That shouldn't come as a surprise. They abhor it. And there's the death penalty for paedophilia in Pakistan. So I said to this chap, I asked him, I said, look, this is a fantastic opportunity for a diplomatic win for Pakistan. Get the Prime Minister of Pakistan or the Minister of the Interior, their equivalent of the Home Secretary, to stand up and say, we'll take all these bastards back from the United Kingdom, send them back. It doesn't cost anything to incarcerate them in Pakistan. It costs us an arm and a leg to incarcerate them here. And I can tell you, they would regret for every moment of the remaining short lives that they would have what they did in order to end up in a Pakistani prison. And he said, send them back. And he said, Ben, we already have an arrangement with the British government.
Wow.
And I said, what do you mean? And he said, we have something called the Pakistan Prisoner Transfer Treaty, pursuant to which, if there's a Pakistani national in the United Kingdom, dual national or national, who's committed a crime of any sort, they can be sent to Pakistan to serve out their sentence. And no one's doing it.
You never hear it on mainstream.
You won't hear it. But where's Starmer? Why isn't he?
Some of them have British passports.
No, but dual nationals. They'll take a dual national back.
Yeah. So
21 citizenships in Pakistan. I looked it up on citizenship. They have 21. No, look it up. Citizenship.
yeah. Well, actually, I'll tell you. Actually, there's a question. There's a question come in from someone who is here, or they have someone else with someone on their behalf here. It's an ex-Muslim, former Muslim person who is in hiding because of fear for their lives, living here in the UK. And he asked the question. He wanted to ask. You know, he says, in order to have meaningful public inquiry and discourse into the torture rape gangs, we need to better, his words, we need to surely better understand the attitude in Pakistani communities here in the UK, and should the views of ex-Muslims be brought into account? Because I think ex-Muslims, and Arif, I see my friend Arif here in the second row. Do you want to just say something in that?
My point is that, as you explained, the terrorism, gang rape of 250,000 British young girls is not terrorism. Trafficking them, drugging them, humiliating them. 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people killed in 9/11, and we found its biggest terrorist attack. What about these innocent British girls? Even we are not allowed to speak about it. If I am posting anything about it on social media, I am Islamophobic, and maybe I will be arrested. Where are we now? You kindly tell me what is the solution. Elections are 4.5 years later. Maybe today we are calling Sir Sadiq Khan. After 4.5 years we will call Ayatollah Khair.
So, yeah. There is a lot to address there, I think. But at the heart of the problem is what Kate's already touched on, which is a preparedness in this country to be generous to a fault. And our generosity has manifested itself effectively in self-harm. And the way we've done it is to say, you can come to our country. I'm sure anyone who watches Talk TV or GB News has heard me say this before. But effectively what we've said to ethnic minorities coming to this country is, you can come to our country. You don't have to practice our values. You don't have to learn about our culture. You can hold our country in contempt. We don't really care. We will give you a protected status in our country. Through diversity, equity and inclusion, we'll put a protected blanket round you. You are most welcome to practice your own cultures, speak your own language, even have your own courts, as long as it doesn't conflict with British courts. and we will allow you to do that which you wish to do to your heart's content. And this isn't just, by the way, a thing between Islam and Christianity or British people. This is a thing between all the different sects of Islam against each other, and they're not a settled religion, number one. It's not a settled religion. And also between ethnic minorities who are not Muslim. So, for example, we had riots in Leicestershire about a year ago between the Indian Hindu community and the Pakistani British community, Indian British and Pakistani British, over a cricket match being played in Karachi where England weren't even playing. And this turned into a riot in Leicester. So what we've got is the breakdown. Society, sorry, forgive me, I'll shut up if you want me to.
No, keep going back, keep going.
So society requires, for society to exist, it requires a settled culture. If you look up the definition of society or nation state, it requires a settled culture. What we have is not diversity and a cultural set of principles that allow us through diversity to have a settled culture. What we've got is division. Yes. We have multi-ethnic division in the United. We do not have a society any longer. When you hear the Prime Minister talking about our different communities, what he's basically saying is we don't have a society. And this DEI, coupled with mass immigration, is destroying the United Kingdom. And this protected blanket is the root cause of not just the two-tier criminal justice system to which I've already referred. It's a two-tier society where protected status is given to people often who hold us in contempt. Ruda Cabana was found, he wasn't so mad that he was prevented from going on trial, but he was obviously on the spectrum at some level, and he was in possession of anti-white genocidal material. And we weren't told about it. And people suspected things were wrong, so we had protests. And through those protests, as I've already mentioned, 70-odd British people are now languishing in jail, one of whom, I'm going to mention him, Peter Lynch, a 61-year-old grandfather who had stuff of a conspiracy nature on his placard, and he said a few things to the police. He was incarcerated for 2 years and 8 months. He hanged himself after 2 months because he shouldn't have been in prison, and he couldn't take it. You haven't heard a single British politician talk about him. Not a single British politician talk about him.
Yeah, but you say, Kate, diversity is our strength, isn't it?
No, but it isn't. The way we're practicing diversity of thought is our strength.
Yeah, but they mean homogeny of thought is what they want.
So what we've got, absolutely. Sorry, you stole my words. Brilliant, David. We've got homogeny of thought, division of culture. What we should have is diversity of thought and homogeneous culture. And what was so great about the British Empire, let's just speak proudly for a second. What was so great about the British Empire? We were prepared to discuss, debate, and take on new ideas. That's how we became the greatest country in the world. And we've shut that all down in the pursuit of this ideology. And so we should be brave about talking about Islam. We should be brave about talking about the different sects in Islam. We should be brave about talking about Hinduism and all the other ethnic minorities that exist in this country. And we should abolish this protected blanket. And even Martin Luther, I mean, for goodness sake, Martin Luther King said, it's not about your skin, it's not about the colour of your skin, it's about the content of your character.
Correct, yeah.
How far have we come from Martin Luther King? Anyway, I've talked enough.
No, I mean, what diversity should have been is about getting rid of unnecessary barriers to groups of people to progress. But what we have actually done is put other barriers up for other people. So you don't do ethnic minorities any favours by putting the barricades up so that white people can't get through. But I remember, I mean, if people that pretend that they're interested in diversity really were, and that they harp on about so many things, they would be really, really annoyed and never stop talking about the fact about unemployment rates amongst autistic people. But nobody really cares about that. And I remember having a bit of a ding-dong on social media with something about justifying all women shortlists for MPs, which, I mean, I wouldn't vote for somebody that agreed to do that. But I said, oh, right, so you decided that you need to have more women MPs, that there are not enough women MPs. What statistics are you working on about the representation of autistic people in Westminster? So that you can know that they, you know, and she just, oh, we've got lots of policy. No, but how have you decided that it's okay for you to not let an autistic man, you know, go for that seat, and more blether. But now, of course, all he would have to do is buy a frock, put an unconvincing wig on, and apply his lipstick very badly, and he's in there. You know, but let's say if they really cared about that, and it's a little bit back about this woke and not woke, because one of the best examples that I recently about what is woke is those trans pride zebra crossings, which mean that people who need dogs are confused by it. But that doesn't matter, because woke is not about actually helping disadvantaged people. It is about virtue signalling. And one of the best responses I saw to that was a gay guy on Twitter going, oh goody, I can cross the road now. I couldn't cross the road before they did this, you know. And that's actually one of the positive things that I can see is people within a lot of these groups, protected characteristics, are saying, stop that, don't treat us like that. And you know, lots and lots of ethnic minorities are actually saying, no, I'm actually patriotic. You know, don't speak for me, and don't make me have to be grateful to you to patronise me. And the thing too about immigrants, if you've got immigrants that have come here legally and have contributed, why are they not allowed to come to the same conclusions that other people come to about the danger of uncontrolled immigration puts to their lives? You know, if they've settled here and they're contributing and they've got a stake in our future, why are they not allowed to be concerned about illegal immigration or uncontrolled legal immigration? And it's that different, the sort of negative racism that is actually how diversity has, is in it. What it should have been, as I say, is about getting rid of barriers to different people for them to progress. But what it has actually done is created barriers for the majority to progress, and that does nobody any favours.
No, you're right about that. I mean, well, one of the other things that strikes me is that here in the UK we have different ethnicities, some of whom do integrate very well. I'm thinking of Hindu community, obviously Jewish community, long-standing here, and they've integrated well. But I think from speaking to people in those communities that they're fearful of where we are going as a country, because it's like other ethnicities and groups seem to be given, certainly by this current administration, a favoured status, which puts the fear in them, I think it's fair to say.
I think the other thing that needs to be mentioned is that the specific form of Islam, and there are many different forms of Islam, the specific form of Islam that is practiced in the United Kingdom is what I would call a fundamentalist form of Islam, a Wahhabi Islam, if you know what I mean, from a 17th century purist. And it has no see, one of the problems that Islam has, are we going to talk about
Islam?
Yeah,
we happily talk about Islam.
One of the problems Islam has is that one of the challenges for Islam, a fundamental challenge, is that the Quran is the word of God dictated by Gabriel to the Prophet Muhammad. And if, of course, you believe that the holy book is the word of God, then by definition it's perfect. And if it's perfect, it is not open to challenge, it is not open to debate, and it therefore isn't open to evolution. Now, a lot of Muslims want to evolve with time. They did evolve, and then in the 17th century this guy, Wahhabi, someone or the other, he wasn't in agreement with his brother, by the way, who was opposed to it, but he wanted to reassert the truth of Islam, the fundamental nature of Islam. And his form of Islam has slowly taken a grip across the Middle East, and particularly in the United Kingdom. And I'll just give you an example. I was born in Karachi in 1965 with the tailwinds of the British Empire, and I can tell you, it was a fantastic place to live. For all those people who want to kick the British Empire in the shins and say it was bloody awful, I can tell you as a child in the post-imperial winds of the British Empire, it was fantastic. Broad open avenues, irrigation that worked, drainage that worked, electricity that worked, fantastic schools, great buildings, all built and left by the British.
We need it here now.
What? Yeah. And one of the things that was one of the...
I was born in Karachi in 1964.
So I was born in 1965, so you will remember exactly the same. Yeah, so you'll remember the wide open, lovely avenues and the beautifully painted trees. We paint our trees because they were painted white up to a certain level, then with a red band. I mean, this was immaculate imperialism. When I was a child, if you were saying goodbye to someone, you would say Khuda Hafiz, which basically meant, you know, God see you safely, God be with you. And now in Pakistan, you can't say Khuda Hafiz, because Khuda could be any God. He could be a Muslim God, he could be Allah, he could be a Christian God, he could be a Hindu God. So Khuda Hafiz ain't good enough. You have to say Allah Hafiz. And Allah Hafiz, because you are identifying the God that... And this is the trajectory that Islam has been on. Islam is not a settled religion. Not everyone who is a Muslim follows this form of Islam, this purest form of Islam. There are many Muslims who look at the niqab, do you know what I mean by the niqab, the full top to head to toe? They look at the niqab with contempt because they see that it is the dumbing down of the woman, the removal of her rights as an individual. And they agree with it. But you know what is so weird? It's so weird, is that through liberalism in this country, we emancipated women, even sometimes against their will. We took women out of Victorian sort of purgatory, for want of a better word, and we gave them the vote. We liberated them, we made sure that they had the right to work, we made sure there wasn't a gender wage gap, and so on and so forth. And it is that same liberalism now which is cited to say these women in the niqab have the right to wear a niqab. And the niqab is the outer expression of the inner repression of these women. And yet it is our liberal stupidity that is equating that to allowing them to practice their rights.
Kate, would you like to see the niqab banned in the UK?
Well, I think you probably remember the time when Jack Straw had a lady come into his constituency, and I've had this as well, where they were completely covered, and usually with another person, and he refused, and I refused. I just said something like, "I'm sorry, I can't see you. Would you mind taking off your facial thing?" And she did. You know, so I think if people, I think just banning it like this would just create. I'm not sure that it would be. It's more likely to make people then rebel against that, and we would have real problems. I think what we should do is challenge it. I don't think anyone should be allowed to be covered up in any situation where they're dealing with a public authority.
Yeah, I think the French have banned it, haven't they?
Yeah, and I understand.
By the way, did you see the president of Italy has been visiting Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
And she refused to cover up.
Yes.
Which normally, if even our Queen, I think, when they went, certainly the current Queen, covered up, not covered up in a totally, but more a headscarf. And I don't see when you're in and there is a certain element of politeness. I suppose if you're in somebody else's country, then you behave in their way. But it's just people when they come here, they don't behave.
They're not behaving the way that we behave when they come here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
exactly.
Reciprocal.
Yeah. So I understand Kate's sensitivity around banning the niqab.
But you would ban it?
I would ban it, because I think it sends a signal.
Would you?
I kind of agree.
I love a hijab. Just the niqab.
Yeah. So the niqab. Yes, I think I might be persuaded.
Have we a consensus?
I mean, well, it's a kind of, I don't like it because there is the kind of thing about freedom, but then I think there is a security implication and a security threat, and I think so that I would be a reluctant. I would come on board maybe, but I would be kind of reluctant.
Yes, I mean, I'm always very much against banning things.
Yeah, I know.
And as a principle.
But it is. But I tell you what, I do get annoyed when I go through an airport, which I do regularly, and although they're getting better now with the new machines, you know, and there's someone in front of me wearing very long Muslim robes or whatever, and they don't, and I have to take everything off their low cut thing and say, well, why do I have to take? No, you must take your, you know, your cardigan off, and yet there's somebody in front of me going right through without having to take things off. And I asked one day at London City Airport and was told, well, you know, that's their religion. So I said, oh, well, can I say it's my religion too, and just walk, you know. It's not their fault, they're just following orders. Sorry?
What did she
say? I can't hear.
Sorry, can't hear.
The girl who got murdered by the
Sarah,
stepmother.
the hijab.
Oh yeah.
They covered her up to hide the bruises.
Yes.
Sarah Sharif.
There was a guy that went through as a terrorist, and he dressed up as his sister. One who got through some years ago.
There is a certain irony, especially at airports, funnily enough, when you see people in Muslim attire actually on security. Like, it is, where have we gone wrong in this one here, you know? Is it just because fundamentally it is about time that Britain started to assert itself and stopped apologising and stop being so cowardly?
That's the point. And President Trump did this on his first day. He banned DEI. Ban DEI and this will go away. Ban mass immigration, get rid of illegal migrants, eliminate DEI, and the problem's gone. It's actually quite straightforward.
Sorry, Anna, if you want to say something.
Elimination of Islamic Sharia court, which is contradictory to our security.
That shouldn't be. There should be only one judicial system. Absolutely.
That's right, and that's been here for quite. I mean, we have two-tier justice didn't just happen.
I'll tell you something really interesting about the Sharia court. So there are some men. Sorry, am I talking too much?
You're here to talk.
So, in this country, women have protection in the event of a divorce, but there are obviously some Muslim, not many, but there are some Muslim men who have more than one wife because it's possible for them to do that. And our courts don't recognize the multiple wives because our courts don't recognize it. So those wives of this, they're just regarded as mistresses under our law, and they have no protection in divorce. So it's such a bizarre thing, you know, it's so weird. The collateral implications of not having a settled society and not all practicing the same law are manifold.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that's before we even get to the economic damage done by DEI, etc. So I mean, it's just got to go, right?
So does Trump basically say that all Muslim men can only have one wife?
No, but what you mustn't have is the ability under Sharia law to have multiple wives. So if it's banned at any level.
Yeah, but I think we're going to see such a big shift
with Trump.
Yeah. That I hope, my sincere hope is that some of our politicians will find the courage. But here's a question: the media, you talk about GB News and Talk TV, but if we talk about the beloved BBC or Sky News, RIP, and whatnot, I mean, they don't want to have any of this discussion at all. I mean, they do not want to engage in, for example, anything you've just said, because it's verboten. And
I mean, look, we weren't prepared to challenge gang rape gangs because we were fearful of being accused of rape. So how the hell are we going to have an open intellectual discussion on the subject?
That's the problem.
You know. Well, I mean, that's another really interesting point. there are groups, not just in the civil service, but in the police, in the home office, in border force, that are congregating around cultural differences. And that is wrong.
And the National Health Service as well.
And the National Health Service.
In all our public services. And that's got to stop.
Do you know one of the biggest issue I think we've got coming is our lack of birth rate. We just don't have babies. We have 25% fewer babies than we need every generation. The birth rate is now 1.5-ish per female, and it's going down.
Well, this is the point. Elon Musk has pointed out that without babies, there's no future, and we've been in this position actually, Kate, for
the media. I mean, I think everybody must, and I'm sure everybody here does, support GB News. But I mean, GB News, they were out to get it. The advertising still isn't coming through because of the way it works, and the conglomerate decide where they're going to place their adverts. But I mean, GB News has been a voice of fresh air, hasn't it? It's actually really given people like Ben a real opportunity to no, and seriously, you know, the BBC has to be challenged. The licence fee should go. It's just, and it again, the Conservatives had that they were going to do, get rid of at least making it a criminal offence not to pay your licence fee, and they opted out from that, and they didn't make any changes when they had a majority of 80. So it's just, you know.
Is that because politicians are afraid of the BBC?
No, I don't think. I think it's just this sort of general thing that the BBC is a publicly, you know, funded service that's famous all over the world. We mustn't really rock the boat on it, but also because it does actually, whoever is in power does tend to support in some way the government of the day, you know, because they need to be continually supported by the government of the day.
People don't consume news that way. They don't. The younger generation.
Well, you're right.
Really, they've killed themselves and their policy. People just turn off, and people have turned off. I mean, I don't. Does anyone watch the news?
Yeah, hands up.
How many of you are still paying your licence fee? Very good, very good.
This is a very enlightened audience, Kate, as you can tell. Sorry, I'll come to some more questions, so just keeping an eye on time. We'll get some questions in. You know, but the thing about it is, like, you know, it is that fear. Have you been invited on the BBC?
I don't get frequently invited, but I always. I've done question time a few times. I sometimes do the news, but I always say yes. The only time I'm slightly reluctant is Newsnight. Newsnight, they just get. I mean, Newsnight's the worst, particularly after, you know, with Emily Maitlis, it was terrible. But and Victoria Derbyshire. I mean, Victoria Derbyshire is really quite. I don't know, the camera's on, but she is intellectually challenged, so it's an issue. And no, I think it's important to go on the BBC and Sky and face the enemy, if you like. I think it's important. Laura Koonsberg, I think it's good to face the enemy.
Do you agree?
Well, it's good to face the enemy.
Yeah, on the BBC.
I have mixed views about it. I mean, I think, yeah, on one hand it's right, because, you know, that you can't complain about not being heard if you don't put yourself forward. On the other hand, it's just, it can be so tricky, you know, the way that they do that. But I think probably on balance you are right to take any opportunity you can, because you're well up for them, Ben.
But the other thing is, as media changes and the media mix changes, as the new media comes along in all kinds of formats, the relevance of the mainstream media diminishes.
Can I just give you an example of that? It's a brilliant thing. So there's a guy called Mihao. We're in the Polish Centre. Mihao, his surname is beyond me, but it was a lot of consonants starting with K and ending in I. And so I've got business in Poland, and I was on the GB News equivalent in Poland about a month ago, something called TV Republica, and I talked about the need for getting out of the EU, blah, 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 blah. And I got a text on Messenger from a Polish lady, Anna, this chap's mother, saying this guy's being held in a British jail, and they won't release him on bail. And he's been held since September without being released. So it's another political prisoner, because he's a Polish politician. And his extradition trial isn't until July. So he would have been in jail from September until July without even having had a hearing. And she said, is there anything you can do about it? So I did a tweet, just one tweet, setting out his circumstances, and I added Elon Musk at the bottom. And and Elon Musk just did one word response. He said yes.
Yeah, sure he does. Yeah.
And it caused a furore in Poland, and the guy was released on bail yesterday.
I honestly see this as a force for hope. That power, Kate. You know, and as I say, I think we're not going back to the old days of it was the BBC or ITV or maybe Sky. That's gone. In the States, that's been absolutely proven. David, you want to make a point?
I want to make a brief point about social media. I'm Dave Anderson 20 on Twitter X. I've seen you, yeah. Yeah, indeed. I spend far too much time on Twitter. In fact, it's my full-time job now. The last year, where else for £9 a month can you get 1 billion views? That's how many I've had in the last year.
Really?
1 billion.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I spend far too much. It's my job now.
Yeah, but it's huge reach and it's huge influence, and you can say things that you'll never be allowed to say on the mainstream.
Sure.
And I think that's what Donald Trump he used that to win in 2016, and
I approximately do about 40 a day, something like that, 40 tweets a day.
Yeah.
There's still too many people that don't have it though. My mum and dad, those families, they've only got BBC ITV.
Yeah.
They don't even have the internet.
I know.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of people do still watch the BBC, and they see the BBC News as the credible news.
Right. I want to bring a few people in just at the end. I'm conscious that the voices can't be heard from the recording though. But at the very back, Dan. Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to know where the post came from. Before you came. It's with regards to who actually runs the country, because I know firsthand it isn't the elected officials, whether it's Labour, whether it's Conservative. This is just your point with regards to the Conservatives didn't do anything with the BBC licence. They don't run this country. The elected officials do not run this country. It's the civil service that run this country. They
Right.
Any other ideology?
Yeah, and I think you're right.
If I could just one more extension to that. Dominic Cummings recently gave a speech on how the civil service works, and he explained what it would be like in cabinet meetings. He was 100% correct. The elected officials, it's panto politics. Everything is pre-scripted, everything is set out, all of the minutes, everything. So, yeah, that's just my point. Sorry, Kate.
No, I was going to say, one of the things that the civil servants now are really missing is the European Union, because they were on hotlines to Brussels, and whenever, they didn't have to make decisions, they had a great, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I certainly knew when I was a minister that your permanent secretary particularly had huge influence, and if they didn't want something delivered that you wanted delivered, they didn't just come and say, no, you're not doing that. They would find a way of slowing it down, of moving it on, and that still happens. And even the most powerful. I mean, we saw. I mean, the reality is, I know we probably have different views about Boris, but I mean, the reality was Boris was brought down by people within his own. It's not just in terms of politicians, but civil service at Whitehall who didn't want him, who wanted him out. Really, because of Brexit.
Right, sorry, gentleman there, just a couple of questions. You, and then that's it. Yeah.
Yes, I think the good thing about your committee is that hopefully we'll be able to ask some questions from people, the politicians, or the media across the world, aren't asking questions that people really want to ask. For instance, all over the country, after Southport, and after the rate cap, people are saying that we need to have at least a discussion on bringing back the death penalty for the worst crimes, such as mass rape or the murder of children. But the politicians do not want to have this discussion. And secondly, last week, there was a big discussion about preventing the MI5 watch list. understanding is you don't even really know how many people are on the M15 boxes. I heard it's got 40,000. If it is 40,000, then I think we need to know, because I think everyone have already said they can't watch all those people. Because when you think about it, 40,000 people, you watch one person for 24 hours, you need 3 people.
I think, thanks. Thanks. I mean, the point is here that you're right, and Ben, maybe this is the benefit of, I mean, there are issues that concern people in this room, which politicians, mainstream certainly won't touch.
Yeah.
Like, say, debt on the biggest one.
So just very quickly, so we have a link on our website which you can click on and put your policy ideas forward, and they will feed up, and so we will be taking great note of that. But on the law and order issue, no number of police officers, no number of Secret Service agents, no number of judges, no number of courts is going to be sufficient to get rid of crime. What we need to do is to inculcate the belief in would-be criminals' minds, including anyone who's come to this country from abroad, that if you commit a crime, you will be apprehended, you will be charged, and you will face judgment, and you will be incarcerated if necessary. And what we've lost is control of that. That belief has gone out of criminals' minds, and they think they can take the criminal justice system for a ride. So in terms of making sure it works, I don't think it's about ever more draconian measures. I think it's about actually just making sure criminals believe they're going to be caught and punished, which was the basis on which Robert Peel, introduced the Bobby in the first place.
Yeah, gentleman there, and we're going to wrap things now.
Thank you. I think what we've lacked in this country for too long is people supposedly on the Conservative side have lacked a muscular conservatism. And what Trump shows is that when you have that force of personality, even the likes of poster boy of the liberal elite start pandering to the Conservative side.
Yeah, thanks very much. Right, folks, yes, you can.
I can't not pass up this opportunity just to make this point to a wider audience outside Northern Ireland. But just on the terrorism thing, in Northern Ireland, by law, if a terrorist injures himself with his own bomb, trying to murder someone else, by law, he is a victim. I know, it's shocking. And that law wasn't even passed at Stormont. That was passed at Westminster. And we tried, getting, I remember it was an early day motion that you put up, and our victims group ran around MPs, and they said, oh, well, it's not really anything to do with us. Well, A, it is, because it's happening in the United Kingdom with taxpayers and that thing. But one of the things that terrorists are entitled to do is to sit on the victims' forum with actual victims. And there was just an awful heart-rending incident of a man whose baby son was murdered by the IRA, and he was on the victims' forum. I had no idea that this man that he kind of got friendly with, also in the victims' forum, was an unrepentant IRA bomber. Now, the man had not suffered enough without being put in that position. And victims, innocent victims, unless we have to use that phrase, innocent victims, to differentiate, should not have to advocate for our needs in the presence of the people that made us victims.
Yeah, I mean, this is all called part of the peace process. And I think it's very important to remind people that when the Good Friday Belfast Agreement went through, people from the pro-union side thought, right, that's it. We've now got, Northern Ireland is secure. The Republic had reneged on, or had gone back on saying they had a claim in Northern Ireland, and that was the end of it, the peace, the end of it. The Republicans and the IRA side saw the Belfast Good Friday Agreement as a process, that this was the beginning of the next stage to get to United Ireland. So when people talk to you about the peace process, it wasn't really about peace, although it did stop the violence at that time. It was about a process which is aimed at breaking up the European Union.
And I was very pleased to have actively campaigned against it at the time. Absolutely, every aspect of it. This is a point of interest. Yeah.
Because the thing that I see, because it didn't actually bring peace, because people were murdered since that, but it's the fact that actually the IRA had been effectively defeated by the intelligence services and the police, but victory was given back to them.
But it's actually, I remember this thing, it was an appeasement process, and it is a fundamental issue we have as a United Kingdom. Unfortunately, our establishment is too keen to appease, and all appeasement brings.
It's not a new problem. It's infected.
But I mean, I was against the Belfast Agreement. I mean, you didn't even have to scratch my unionism, just the idea of release of terrorists. And even the idea that could be put on the ballot paper, that you could actually vote to release terrorists from prison. I think that, even if the vote had gone no, the fact that we put on the ballot paper, it made the world a more dangerous place. But you do not decide justice by public vote. I mean, if it was to be a public vote on putting Tony Blair in stocks.
Oh yeah. We can make an exception for Tony Blair.
I find it hard not to vote for that, and I think that was a very good chance of getting through. Because I mean, you have a character like Margaret Thatcher, and loads of people, yes, despised her, but loads of people loved her. Tony Blair, loads of people despised him, and loads of other people despised him. Justice by the public vote.
I think on the image of Tony Blair in the stocks, it's probably good enough to actually bring proceedings to an end. So listen, I'm conscious of time, I'm sorry. Well, very quickly.
Just mention one name that hasn't been mentioned tonight, whether you like him or not, about human rights, is how Tommy Robinson's been treated. And he's now been refused to allow any of his friends who've got social media channels to go and visit him. He's been in prison in isolation for 21 and a half hours a day. He's not a criminal. He's there on, and he's got another 6 months, and they're not letting anyone come to see him. No one's mentioned this. And this is about human rights. Where's his human rights?
When I talk about a two-tier justice system, criminal justice system being used against our people on our side of the debate, and I talked about the 70 people, obviously I had Tommy Robinson also in mind. And I don't know how many people follow me on Twitter, but the way I came into contact with Elon Musk to start with was because Elon Musk tweeted Tommy Robinson's a political prisoner. And then Nigel Farage, I'm going to call him Nige went on television and said, no, he's rightfully in jail because he's guilty of contempt of court. And I was surprised that Nigel would say that, because it was the Attorney General, who is a political appointment, Lord Hermer, who's protected Jerry Adams, who's trying to reverse part of the Legacy Act in order to allow Jerry Adams to get. So this man is an awful man, Lord Hermer. He is a bad, bad man. And he is a political appointment. And he interceded in the civil case that was the one that was being, it was breach of a civil case, breach of an injunction through a civil case that had caused Tommy to be in contempt of court. And the Attorney General, this awful man, decided that this was past the bar required in order for him to get involved, and that it was a matter of national public interest. And so he turned it into a contempt of court criminal case. And normally that would have, you just get let off, you get a rap on your wrist, you get a fine, a penalty or whatever. But then Tommy Robinson was incarcerated for an exceptionally long period of time. I think he's going to be out after 9 months or something. But actually an exceptionally long period of time. And so I tweeted all of this. And I said, when Nige comes to Washington to explain this to you, Elon, perhaps you could show him a copy of this post. And Elon then tweeted back, and that's how Elon followed me, and that's how I've had some more interaction with Elon Musk. But it took Elon Musk to recognize no one here in our political sphere recognises that whatever you think of him, and I don't know Tommy Robinson, I keep saying, and I say this because otherwise people go, you're a Tommy Robinson fan. It's got nothing to do with Tommy Robinson. It's the issue. It's the free speech, and it's habeas corpus, actually. It's the incarceration of a human being wrongfully under political, with a political aim. And so that's it. But sadly, Elon didn't meet Nige, so Nige wasn't able to explain to him.
Yeah, that was a tragedy. That was So look, as always is the case. I mean, you could talk all night, but we're at the time where we have to eventually wrap things up. So listen, all that really remains for me to say is thank you to Aileen, to Kate, to Ben. I hope you've enjoyed them. A big round of applause, please, for the panel. I just want to thank our sponsors again. I want to thank the guys there from Gold Bullion, and do make sure you can get in contact with them if you want to protect your wealth. And of course, yes, I should thank Wendell, who's been doing an ace job. Just to say, this event will be going. There will be recordings of that, which will be posted extensively across social media in the next 24 hours. Maybe you send it to Elon Musk, Ben. That would be good. And I hope to welcome you back in the not too distant future for another such event. But thank you all very much for being here. Good night.